I saw her once a long time ago, and that was the only time I saw her. She was only a face in a crowd, and as I recall it, she had a trace of a smile. She was wearing a white jersey dress and carrying a brown bag, and her hair was sort of loose and windblown. And perhaps for just a fraction of a second, our eyes met, and then she walked past. When I looked back over my shoulder, maybe a half dozen steps later, she was gone. I never saw her again. I can't tell you why, but I can remember her as vividly as if it had happened a moment ago. There's a lot said about this small piece of land, but we'll leave it for another time, another place. Take a long, fond look and simply recall that each of us has yearned for the cabin by the sea, heard far-off train whistles and lonesome foghorns, and distant laughter in the night, or felt the Indian summer enchantment of a state fair. Privately, we've sighed with A.E. Houseman when he wrote, "And long I used to stand and look at things I could not buy." Or mooned for a moment over an old record they played a lot during our freshman year at college. The desert island syndrome stays with us. A little foolish, a little afraid, but forever standing there in the back of the mind like a face you can't forget or a dream you won't let go of. Consider that restless streak within you. Do you pacify it with that cheap, dissatisfying bromide, "It might have been"? Were all your castles made of sand, your dreams as brief as summer clouds? Consider, if you will, the first 8 lines of Mr. Houseman's little verse before we go on with the story. "When first my way to the fair I took, few pence in purse had I, and long I used to stand and look at things I could not buy. Now times are altered. If I care to buy a thing, I can. The pence are here, and here's the fare. But where's the lost young man? He's somewhere along these streets, a dim young face in the past, trudging back and forth to school. And she is here, too, tidy and prim and delicate as music at the edge of sound. And they are here, their faint, distant voices echoing in hollow corridors. Take a long, fond, longing look. There is a pungent pleasure roaming back in time. You and I, who are adults in the 1960s, have many years to look back on, to ponder, to reconsider what was worthwhile and what was junk. Much is funny and frivolous, and much more forgotten. Among these new antiques, we grew up, did homework, avoided homework, plotted, and made big plans. Our easy childhood gave us Shirley Temple mugs to help us drink our milk, a big little book to read under the covers after bedtime, or a souvenir of the biggest and best show of all time, the Texas Centennial, or a big fat radio in the living room to carry the latest Orphan Annie code message. Who's that little chatterbox, the one with curly golden locks? Who can she be? But we were soon caught up in quick and changing times, and that innocent instrument that made the world bigger and brighter made it smaller and grim.
His masterful musical stylings from the Meadowbrook in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. More music now for your late evening listening pleasure.
Wallace said he would like to have the bill through Congress at this session. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Roosevelt delivered the first of his fireside chats of the year.
You can't go home again, Thomas Wolfe told us, and we believed him, though we'd never left home and we were dying to. On the other hand, live and learn, both extremely bothersome processes at that age, especially the learning part. Oh, we'd long been wise to the ways of the world with a special kind of knowledge. Richard Halliburton was one of the first to show how fast the earth was shrinking. Its Taj Mahals and Hellespont, however vicariously we discovered them, seemed all there was worth conquering. We knew about things, all right. Hadn't we read that life is real, life is earnest, and the thoughts of youth are long, long thoughts? Our thoughts, however long, however earnest, were put to better use, listening to late-night radio music from the East Coast, or Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy from the West, or thinking up a new knock-knock joke to spring on the unsuspecting.
Knock-knock. Who's there? Dwayne. Dwayne who? Dwayne the bathtub. I'm drowning.
The whole notion of romantic love descended upon us mysteriously, and if our hometown was short on romantic idols, as everybody's hometown is, we had motion picture stars to show us what life was really like once you were free of the shackles of school or doing the Sunday dishes. Going away to college would be one long, carefree lark, with you as a part-time football hero, full-time wizard in chemistry and math, and big man on campus. After all, how could you fail with funny sidekicks like Jack Oakey and Joe Penner, or sweethearts like Ann Miller, Betty Grable, or Ann Sheridan? You take 2 parts Hollywood, 1 part wishful thinking, and you had the genial prototype of Joe College and Betty Coed, until one day you did graduate from high school. And one day you bought a bus ticket. And one day you climbed aboard with a one-way ticket that carried with it a kind of automatic manhood. It was their one big dream, but the lump in their throats was big enough to fill the bus. The way it is when dreams come true, and knowing they would never see you in quite the same way again. It seems only yesterday, which was a good day, that you took that big, long, giant step into the new nobility of the college campus. And while there may have been more yesterdays than you care to count, you could live to be 100 or 2 and not find any other day to equal the fine frenzy of that day you arrived. The air you breathed was more than air, the people you met more than mortals. The whole atmosphere was electrified by some strange new force you could neither define or deny, and you only hoped it would rub off. If this was college, bring it on. Bring on the savoir-faire and the cause célèbre and all those fine-sounding phrases to be sprinkled through your speech. Bring on the brass bands, the rallies, the rooting sections. Bring it on and bless them all. Oh, you may have been subjected to the subtle indignities of mailing your laundry home, but you were part of a golden age, a time of your life that would help sustain a lifetime. You may have drawn your lot with the Greeks or with the fiercely independents. But transcending the rivalry of classes, cliques, or social clubs was the universal fellowship of the educated man. An attitude that was to give you a certain edge, a certain indefinable something. That certain everything that college bestows upon you, like an invisible mantle draped around your shoulders when you stand a little taller. Then something happened. Something you hadn't counted on. It came with a sudden, startling jolt, like boxcars connecting in a railroad yard. Your mind collided with ideas. Ideas that had lines in their faces and a way of talking that seemed to ripple like clear water in a fresh stream. Ideas that sat in quiet book-lined studies or dashed out on a white charger to fight for right and reason. It was Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes who said, "A mind once expanded to the size of a new idea can never return to its original dimensions." And no idea is ever so delicious as when it's shared with those who are quick, keen-witted, sensitive, articulate. No thought is exquisitely simple as your own when you discover it already expressed in the words of Addison or Browning, Shelley or Thoreau. It was a blaze at noon, a headlong love affair with learning for its own sake. How long it was before the bubble burst was mostly a matter of months. Whether you were 18 or 21, whether you were a sophomore or a senior, eligible or deferred. You knew you'd grow old before your time, would be called to leave the thing you had only recently learned to live, and take part in a war that was neither your own making or really within your own understanding. The world had turned upside down, and in a whole new set of circumstances, you realized acutely how very precious are the things we take for granted. Like college, for one thing, one very big thing. They turned off the lights around the world, and if there was a single ray of hope in all the grimness and futility, it was simply to return to the world you knew. Back to apple pie, hot dogs, and pitching horseshoes for some. For others, back to university and college, a symbol of the sane and sensible, far, far removed from all the madness, the irrationality, the brutality. The interval that ended on the note that was to become the theme of the next 20 years. Explosion. War has a way of changing perspectives, altering values, teaching lessons. In its aftermath came a new way of looking at colleges and universities in America. In a time when the essential and non-essential became sharply defined, we became more aware than ever before just how indispensable higher education is, not only to our way of life, but our existence as a free people in a dangerous age. Time was not too long ago when the rich, like Scott Fitzgerald's characters, were different from you and me. They'd been to college. They could afford it. It had a faint aura of luxury, wearing raccoon coats, driving a Stutz Bearcat, living John-held caricatures to the hilt. College students of our perfumed past were a different breed of cat. But to the man returning to college or entering it for the first time after the war, a degree became more than a nice thing to have, or good job insurance, or a harmless interlude. In a very real sense, college education was linked with our national survival. From the moment the atom exploded, we stepped into a new dimension whose scope would be determined by knowledge alone. Perhaps it took the shock of that explosion, or simply man catching up with himself in an age that wouldn't wait. But almost overnight, that enormous convolution called the American public recognized what educators had long been pleading. Science, humanities, languages, technology, theology, all areas of human knowledge are essential to the educated man, the thinking man, the free man. Some armed with a GI Bill, others scrambling by whatever means, all spurred on by a new wave of dedication to get degrees at any cost. They came and came and came. Hundreds more each semester, thousands more each year. to state universities and private schools and small colleges that sought frantically to find the space and teachers to handle them all. We began to bandy around terms like population explosion, remote and abstract when you're talking in terms of 60 million starving Indians or Chinese, but recognizable firsthand when you count the number of classrooms by the number of people overflowing them now, 3 times that many 10 years from now. And we talked in fine figurative phrases like an explosion in learning, majestic sounding and meaningless until you considered that the new Mount Palomar Observatory was bringing us closer to the stars and a step nearer the moon. That men were working on lasers that rival the energy of the sun and probing the bottom of the sea to answer some of the riddles of Earth. No need to tell you that you lived in an exciting age. College was close to the source of the excitement. The old saw that college as an ivory tower was wrong, as it always was. Out of these classrooms would come ways to wipe out polio, cure heart disease, conquer cancer and mental illness, and all the countless miseries of mankind, plus be the wellspring of all knowledge, be the key to a fuller life. There was no idle theory about racial unrest, new nations going through revolutions, or the ominous presence of another war under the mushroom cloud of the atom bomb, or a new device they called the hydrogen bomb. A generation of boys and girls who had grown up in wartime planned their future with uncertainty. An old statesman named Winston Churchill had introduced a new set of phrases in a speech at Fulton, Missouri. The Iron Curtain, the Cold War, and a man from Independence refused to budge an inch before a wartime ally that had become a cold, calculating, and open foe. The Kremlin flouted American education, and the more we heard of the crisis in our schools, the more we could wonder if we were lagging while they were gaining. The scene shifted to Korea, to the continent of Asia. Uneasily, we became aware that somewhere east of Suez, out there somewhere beyond the setting sun, an ominous wind was rising in the east. College seemed far behind us in the 50s. We had tucked the sheepskin away in a bottom drawer, hung out a shingle, or had your name painted on a door, got a car and a mortgage and a couple of very good reasons for getting ahead in the world. And you settled back to enjoy the new long weekends and the certain privileges and emoluments that came with the office of junior partner, or account executive, or supervisor, or whatever the title read on the handsomely embossed business card. You had tempered your thinking to believe that this may not be the best of all possible worlds, but you were a little more concerned with new furniture and the crabgrass in your lawn than the same old tiresome troubles you read about in the newspaper. An afternoon in the warm Texas sun helped ease the tensions. The knowledge that you were putting a little money in the bank gave you a sense of security, that you were on the right track. After all, it wouldn't be too many years before you'd have to start thinking about sending your youngster to college. And perhaps now and then you wondered how things were getting along back at the old school. And you wondered about old Professor, what's his name? And about, funny how time flies, and you forget names and things. You were never really completely out of touch. The alumni magazine came regularly with perhaps a note attached requesting a donation, which you may or may not have made, depending on how strapped you were at the moment, or how busy you were. You found it increasingly difficult to get the kind of adequately trained men that your business or industry needed, and you wondered what, if anything, they were teaching them in school these days. Perhaps you even found it feasible to pirate away a professor from some struggling school that couldn't begin to meet your salary. And possibly you viewed the legislative cut in educational expenditures with mixed emotions. It was good to see them budget-minded, but there was passing concern about where the money would come from. You thought about it and got on to more pressing problems. But outside your well-organized world, there's another world, or two, or three, or four that may come home to haunt you. And if not you, your children, whose future you've carefully planned. There's a world on the other side of the tracks, except the tracks aren't there anymore, nor the illusion that internal discord will straighten itself out. And there's the world on the other side of the water, where old nations like Red China are reawakening with a frightening bang, and new nations with strange names are emerging, and big, powerful nations like Russia race us to that world on the other side of the moon, to the planets and solar systems we expect to reach within our lifetime. And there is that world on the other side of knowledge, the vast darkness on either side of life, where men search for an answer to the age-old riddle: what is matter? What produces life? And there's a world close at hand where we see our friends and members of our family cut down by cancer and heart disease and leukemia, mental illness, and even the common cold. The cure or the prevention lies somewhere in the accumulated knowledge of this man, or this man, or one of these men. It's a thrilling thought that on this campus, or this one, there's a single student who may put together all the pieces of the puzzle and wipe out just one of these terrible diseases. It's a chilling thought that when a single qualified student is turned away from one of our colleges or universities, he very well might have been the one. Yet our colleges and universities face the greatest dilemma in the history of education. At a time when the role of higher education becomes more crucial than ever before, there are not enough classrooms to handle the students, or teachers to teach the classes, or money to hire the teachers. And within the next 5 years, the sheer weight of population increases alone will mean that half again as many students will try to enroll in these classes. Yet the world erupts with a new crisis day after day, heedless of whether our schools keep or not. Our rocket and missile industries often look in vain for qualified college-trained scientists and engineers. Racial unrest mars many cities across our country, while restless teenagers come out of high schools to no jobs, no college. And poverty is a way of slow death for thousands of people in the land of the free. And the cause of freedom is a way of quick death at a place on the map that's hard to find. And where do you fit into this, old friend? Now that we've presented the dilemma, do we expect you to charge out into the streets and rally the neighbors, or send us your bank balance? Hardly. But you and I do have a stake in this college problem, whether we have school-aged children or not. And it isn't for the glory of old Ivy alone either. If you're genuinely moved to help your college or university, it's very likely to be from a sense of reality. And that is perhaps the first and last aptitude for maturity. Oh, you can look around you and know if your children are to have the same or better opportunities than your own. If they're to have the same precious moments you had, you who have received the most already must help make it possible. But it goes back farther than that, and deeper, to a moment in time when your heart began to yearn. When first my way to the fair I took, few pence in purse had I, and long I used to stand and look at things I could not buy. Now times are altered. If I care to buy a thing, I can. The pence are here, and here's the fare. But where's the lost young man? To think that 2 and 2 are 4, and neither 5 nor 3. The heart of man has long been sore, and long 'tis like to be. Each generation is the sum total of all its experiences, and what we make of those experiences is the chief legacy we leave to other generations. If there has been one single contribution from those who grew up before and during the Second World War, it is the consuming belief that we can make it a better world. You will not be a generation of losers, a lost generation, but a generation of winners. Your Governor, John Connolly, lends his wholehearted support to this year's CLASP program.
All of us now, at the peak of our personal prosperity and usefulness, have an opportunity to prove what we're made of by giving America and the state of Texas the continuing legacy of a college education, not for the privileged few, but for all. There are many reasons we should support a college or university. Perhaps some of mine are the same as yours. Like, it's a tangible demonstration of loyalty to the alma mater in return for intellectual adventure and a memorable life experience. Or, the fees or tuitions paid fall short of paying the full cost of your college years. Or, the importance of young people to the future of our state and nation demands that everything possible be done to give them a good start in life. Or, and this is particularly appropriate, for all of the schools participating in CLASP. An institution of higher learning is without doubt the most persuasive institution in modern society. You will have few opportunities in your lifetime to become a part of an enterprise that affects so many with so modest a gesture as is a gift to any one of them. The past is something you don't own, but it owns a part of you. And if certain things about it have been good to you, as were the college years to me, you try to pay back. Join me in giving generously. Give now to your college.